Hi guys, I'm Matthew, your VB tutor. Often when we're building an application or a complex spreadsheet in Excel, it's prone to issues where your vital data can become frustrating to work with. Have you ever faced problems like accidentally overriding key information, struggling with performance as your data grows, or trying to manage multiple users updating the same workbook? Or perhaps your file has been corrupted and all that important data has been lost, leading to complex, sometimes costly recovering methods. Or maybe you've even encountered issues where you have to manage enormous data sets exceeding Excel's row limitations and have needed to build methods to handle the limitation. These are common challenges when working directly in Excel. Common practice in application development is to separate the front end from the back end. So that's what we're going to do in this short series. I'm going to step you through how to create a class module that will not only allow you to easily interact with a database, but also to build it dynamically, making you able to distribute your application easily. In this series, we're going to dive into the concepts by first building our class module, then applying that to a basic car rental booking system. You'll learn how to build your database, connect to it, and read and write data to the database with some simple methods. Then you'll see how to make a simple application using this with approaches you can adjust to suit your own needs. By the end, you'll have a system that demonstrates the power of integrating databases into your Excel application, making your applications smarter and more efficient. In this first episode, we're going to cover setting up our required references, creating the class file, declaring class level variables, a log message method, and the class initialize method. So here we've got a completely blank workbook, which I've just saved as a macro-enabled workbook file. First, we need to set up our environment. So in our VBA editor, we'll open up Tools, References, and then you'll need to enable two specific references here. So we'll go down to M, and we want to enable the Microsoft ActiveX Data Objects 6.1 library, and the Microsoft Scripting Runtime. The ActiveX Data Objects library allows us to communicate with ADO objects, which is going to be integral to building our database. And then the Scripting Runtime is basically just so that we can use the dictionary object. This can theoretically be done with collections or arrays instead, but I believe dictionaries are the most efficient way of working with your data. So first, we'll insert a class module. You can right-click anywhere here in the Project Explorer and click Insert Class Module. First thing we'll want to do is name the class. I'm going to call this CLS Database. And I've got this turned on so that you have option explicit automatically at the start of every module that you create. You can turn this on by going to Tools, Options, and then just ticking Require Variable Declaration. So the first thing we're going to do is to create a couple of private variables that are going to be used within the class. So we're going to go private variables. I'm going to call private object and private log file path as string. The log stuff isn't exactly necessary, but it's generally good practice to make sure that your application is providing a log of all the events that happen when interacting or creating your database. The con object, this is going to be our connection object that's going to be utilized throughout the entire class. These are listed as private variables, as it's only going to be referenced from within this class module, not from outside. So because logging is going to be integrated into every part of our application, we're going to build that out first. So we're going to create log message routine. So this is going to be just a private sub. Again, this is only going to be used within the current module, so we don't need to make it public. Log message, and we're going to have a by val message as a string. You'll see me use by val and by ref regularly within this series. I use these as it just explicitly sort of states how these variables are going to be used. By val means you're essentially just passing the value to the method. By ref means you're passing the variable to the method. The difference being is that if you pass a variable to the method, then you can actually adjust or modify that original variable from wherever it was called from, whereas a by val reference just passes the information to the routine and lets you play with it. So always we're going to want to have error handling. So at the start of basically every routine, every function, we're going to have an on error handler here. So the on error handler, we're going to put this down here. So essentially what happens is if an error happens within this, it will skip over the rest of the code and jump down to this label. Because logging is going to be inherent in all of our functions, we don't want it to actually stop the application. So we're just going to debug that, whatever that issue was. So we're going to put debug print logging error, and we're just going to provide the error description. So now what we need is our file. So going to get a file number as an integer. So that file number, we're going to set it to the free file variable. The free file variable just gets a number from the system which reference an open or unused file. So we're going to open the log file path, which is this string here. We're going to set that a bit later on, but we're going to open that within this. For append, which basically means we're adding something to it, as file number. So now we're going to print to the file. We're going to get now as in the current date time so that we know when the log occurred. And then we're just going to put the message there. And then we're going to close the file. Make sure it doesn't stay open in the background. Then we're going to exit the routine. If we don't put this in here, then it will end up just following on down to this error handler, trying to log something that doesn't necessarily exist. So now we're going to build out our class initialization method. If you just select class here from this list, it should create the class initialize method automatically. If it doesn't, you just click on this second list here and go to initialize, and that will populate that. So I want that at the top of my class. So again, we're going to add some error handling to this. And we're going to raise an error. So unlike before, if there is an issue, we want it to actually stop the application. We want the user to know that there's been a problem. So we're going to raise that error. Base manager. So basically we're saying that this is the source, this is where the issue happened. And then we're going to say we've failed to initialize settings and give an error for that, like so. So essentially we're just raising an error. All that means is that we're creating an error alert to the system. If that error is handled somewhere else, then it will pop up from that external area. If it's not handled somewhere else, then it will just pop up from here. All right, now we're going to first check if the path where we want to store our log file has been created. So I want to put this in my AppData folder. I think that's just a generally good practice. So we're going to have environ AppData. So that automatically gets the environment's AppData location. Your AppData is somewhere on the C drive, and then you can typically interact with it any way you want. Then we have a VBA logs folder, and we're going to just check if that directory exists. If that doesn't exist, so that's what we're doing here. Basically, this variable will return the name of the file if it's found. If it finds nothing, then it just returns a blank string. So we're comparing it to a blank string here. If it equals a blank string, that means the file doesn't exist. So, or sorry, the folder doesn't exist. So then we're going to make that directory. So we make dir AppData and VBA logs. So essentially what we've just done here is check if this VBA logs folder exists in our AppData. If it doesn't exist, then we're creating it. And then we're setting what the log file path is going to be. So that's going to be, again, environ AppData and VBA logs. Now I want to call this our database log. Database log. I like to give the database file a name of the current date. That way, if someone's using this application a lot, then they're going to fill up these enormous log files, enormous text files of log information over time. If we separate it by date, then it means that essentially we're just creating a new file every day, and then we can grab that information as we need to. So date, we're going to format that in year, month, day. And then let's do an underscore and give it the name of this workbook. So we're going to go this workbook.name. And we're going to have that as a log file. Essentially, that's just our initialize routine. So all we're doing is just creating the directory if we need to, and then we're assigning the log file path. So that's going to be all for this episode. Check back in episode 2. We're going to start looking at how to create the database and start executing some queries, scalars, creating tables and checking if tables exist, things like that. And then we'll show you exactly how that looks as a database. So thanks very much.